Okay,
Waiting for the
we
train
are
to come
now.
through.
I'm sorry, Matt. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, John, saying waiting for the train to come through.
Yeah, that's it. Okay, so it is now 8:30, and we'll start our meeting. I believe that everybody probably has already had a chance to read the minutes of the January 13th meeting. If there are no questions or no changes to that, I will accept the motion to accept the minutes as written.
So moved.
Second,
And second, please.
second,
Okay, I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes of January 13th. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Okay, they are accepted. And we'll move on to the treasurer's report, please. Mike, you are,
I'm getting off mute
that's good.
and let's see.
Okay,
Here we go. Our February numbers continue to, well, let's see, audit. Let's see here. We go into, wait, here we go. So in February, again, there was not any significant change in the balance sheet from last month, but we are $158,000 increase in assets, primarily as a result of the loan program. And we are continuing to get high volume applications, and the Loan and Asset Committee met yesterday, and we'll have updates at the board meeting next week. On the liability side, we still have on the books the $100,000 emergency impact disaster loan. We are in the process of paying that by May, which is the 1-year anniversary, which was the grace period that gave us no prepayment and no deferred interest. And on the loans payable to the SBA, you can see we're up $284,000. Are there any questions on the balance sheet? Going to the P&L, we're $4,000 under budget in terms of income, and we are looking at comprised of membership and other income and recovery of bad debt. We are starting to get recovery of the bad debt, which is the Angelo loan. I believe Erin and Martha, they've made at least 1, if not 2 months of payment. And we're monitoring that closely. In addition, on the expense side, again, part of where total expenses are up by $12,000, primarily due to consulting fees related to Career Jam, and actually consulting fees are down. The computer equipment and leasing is up. We did purchase an additional computer, and we did additional monitors, so staff could have double monitors at home. And we're also, so our office expense is up $4,000, and our public relations and marketing is up $2,300 because of our $5,000 pledge that we paid to the chamber. And then, so again, this early in the year, based on how we divided out the 12 months of annual expenses, sometimes put some of these in skew, but our net income is negative 23. We had anticipated a negative 7, so we are $16,000 off budget, but I think that we'll make that up as time goes forward. Any questions?
Mike, are we yet ready to reflect the second PPL, this PPP loan?
We have the PPP loan and it will go on the books in March. But we can't, the accountants won't let us record any of that until it's forgiven.
Okay, let me just put a note there when we get to Matt's presentation, because the question derives from his disclosure, okay? But I understand your answer. I'm fine with that.
Any other questions on the February financial reports? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, then I would ask for a motion to approve the treasurer's report, please.
Motion to approve, Jim LePen.
And a second.
Tish Finnegan, second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Dave, you're still on, you're on mute just in case.
Yeah, I'm in favor. Sorry about
Okay.
that.
No problem. Thank you. That treasurer's report has been approved. We'll move on to the audited financial statements. And Matt, I'm going to ask you to maybe make that presentation.
Okay, John, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, so I'd like to go through the financial statements and a required communication letter. So you all have the draft of the document to refer to. So I will reference some of the pages when I go through. So in looking at 2020, what you're going to find in the financials, just kind of an overview here of the financial statements, is that when you look at the opinion, it's unmodified, which is what you'd expect to receive. You'll see that we did not have any control findings that raised to the level of something that I would have to report to you. So when you look at the report in the back of the document, that also is an unmodified report with no control issues or any compliance matters that I have to report to you. The audit went smoothly, despite all the challenges in dealing with COVID and just trying to audit remotely. I mean, the good news is we have the benefit of, we had to do it last year in 2020, we're kind of right where everything had started to get difficult, but we were in a good position in 2020 with the audit process. This year, we did have to audit in a remote environment. I will say that Mike and Aaron and the whole team, Martha, Lisa, everyone who's involved, very proactive in reaching out again. I mean, it's been a theme that I've communicated to this group in the past. Typically what happens is if something does come up, if there's a discussion regarding the allowance, for instance, or with the PPP loans, the programs that you had with whether or not you have a fiscal agent versus a fiscal sponsorship, revenue recognition. I mean, there's a lot of things when you look at the detail of these financial statements that add some complexity to this document. And I can tell you that there's communication along the way throughout the year, which is what is a best practice. In addition, when you look at the other letter, we had no audit adjustments or pass adjustments. Again, that indicates the level of communication that is positive and the shape that your books and records are in. I focus on the audit, but I know Mike focuses also on the reports that he provides to you every month. And I can tell you there's also dialogue there to make sure that there's consistency and you're getting information that should hopefully not surprise you when you get to the audit. So what we had really, in looking at these statements, the things that you're going to see that are a little different are those the fiscal sponsorship arrangements that you had this year. There's a note in the footnotes. We'll get to it, but I think it's note 14 that talks about that. So that activity for the fiscal sponsor is being reflected in your books, grossed up, because you're actually acting on their behalf, and you're recording that activity. The SBA loan, or the PPP loan, I'll differentiate between your SBA program. Your PPP loan is being reflected in the accounting during 2020, as well as the EIDL loan. And then we disclose the fact that you took that second PPP loan as a subsequent event. And we'll talk about that. And there is an accounting choice that you make when you do the PPP loan, whether or not you treat it as a debt instrument or if you try to achieve a different type of accounting. So that's all disclosed in the statements. Another key thing this year, due to in part COVID and the growth in your loan program, you did add $100,000 to your reserve this year, which I felt was prudent. So that is one of the factors also that impacts the results for the year when you look at the bottom line. So let me bring you right now to what the results were, so to kind of tie those things in. So if you refer to page 8, also, I just point out, when you look at page 8, you also have the fact that your appropriation got reduced this year from the county. So that also contributed to the change in for the year on page 8. So your net decrease in net position was 277,000. So you had a reduction of 277,000. When you look at the operating loss, you had an operating loss of 678,000 compared to an operating loss of 486,000 the year before. That's kind of like a third up from the bottom of the page. Typically, you fund that loss with the appropriation from the county in part. You also have some bank interest that you generate. But if you look at this year's total operating expenses, you'll see there's $104,000 of a bad debt expense. That's the provision I'm talking about that you established. So you determined, based on reviewing your loan portfolio, based on the risk portfolio at the end of 2020, to add a reserve, which we agree was appropriate to do. So that contributes, that's a non-cash expense that impacts your expenses. And then when you look at the grant expense, which is the second line under personnel and benefits, you'll see that number is much higher than what it typically would have been in the past. $239,000 of that relates to the 2 fiscal sponsorships that you had related to assisting other organizations. I think, Mike, you have to remind me which 2 organizations was that Berkshire Taconic? I'm trying to remember.
It was Berkshire Taconic Foundation and the Galvin Foundation for the minority businesses in Hudson.
Yeah, so those programs ran through the CEDC this year, and because you were acting in the capacity of a sponsor, you actually show the revenue. When you look up at the grant revenue, that spike that you see from the prior year, approximately $239,000 of that has to do with these 2 programs on the revenue side, and then you granted the money back out, which shows up as an expense. So those 2 numbers should stand out to you, but that's specific to that program, which just is described in note 14. So that was your operating loss. And then when you had less that came through from the county this year, it resulted in a net decrease of that 277,000. So I wanted to point, and you did also on the membership fees this year, given the fact of the environment that we were in, we did see also a downtick on what you were able to raise from a membership contribution perspective. It went down from 55,000, which was, I think, a year that you really had been, emphasizing the growth in the membership, and then it took a downtick in 2020. I'm sure you're hoping then it begins to come back up as we come out of this, to get back up to where you had been and continued growth in that membership income. But that also impacted your total revenue. So then if you look at the cash flow, which actually tells you a little bit of a different story, on page 10, you'll see at the top of the page, it actually showed, that's actually the final, the previous page has all the detail, but it sums up to the top of the page on page 10. You'll see total cash actually went up $147,000. So you say, why did cash go up? We had a loss of $277,000. If you look at page 9, you'll see that a lot of that was funded through the PPP and idle money You also drew down another $250,000 for your SBA program, your loan program. Now, one thing I want to point out, Mike knows this because we had the discussion with him, but you're very close because of your success in the SBA program. When you reach $750,000 of federal money, you then are subject to a single audit. If some of you, I think, were around when we had a single audit years ago, and then it kind of dropped off. So as you grow the federal program, which is the SBA the microloan program, most likely, because I think you had that another draw as a subsequent event this year, right, Mike, in 2021?
Yes, we were awarded $300,000 and we've drawn down 125.
Yeah, so we're going to add that to your subsequent event footnote too, that you had subsequently drawn down that money. But what that's going to do, we have to look at the calculation again, but you're right on the cusp of requiring a different type of audit next year in 2021, which would mean we would do a compliance audit that would include the SBA microloan program. That's just something to consider for the future. And anyone can ask questions along the way if you want. So I don't know, I feel free. So that's what caused your cash to go up, is because of some of the financing that you had. I want to talk about actually just go back to the balance sheet. So then the balance sheet on page 7 shows that you have right in the middle of the page, $3.599, almost $3.6 million of assets compared to $3.53 the year before. You can see that cash position is still, in my opinion, very healthy, $1.5 million. It grew the amount we just talked about. And the loan program is reflected. The fact is that you did have a good amount of loan activity this year. You lent $671,000 in new loans to 27 businesses, which I think is fantastic. I do other organizations such as yourself that don't have anywhere near that type of activity. And then payments that came in were $550,000. So you actually lent more money out than you received back in, which to me is a good thing, because the amount that you're receiving back in is according to your amortization tables. You may have had some impact because of, again, COVID. We talked about the reserve of $100,000, but the bottom line is you made $671,000 in loans, 27 businesses, which is described also in note 4 on page 17. So that's reflected in the balance sheet here on page 7. Your net position is where you'll see the reflection of the $277,000 loss. You went from 2.99 million at the bottom of the page there to 2.7 million. And you can see your unrestricted, that all, really was impacted by your unrestricted net assets, net position. I'm going to pause for just a second to see if anyone did have any questions so far. Okay, so then what I wanted to point out, so let's talk about actually, let me talk about first the concentration of credit risk. So if you look at page 15 and go into page 16, this is one of the things I talked to Mike about. You have historically always thought about whether or not you have your cash and your CDs in the right place to make sure that you're covered for FDIC. I think we're showing that at that point in time, there was some FDIC exposure. Your policy indicates that it should be FDIC covered or have collateral. So what we're suggesting here is just maybe revisiting that and seeing that it might just be time again to revisit that. We've talked about it in the past. I'm not trying to make a big deal out of it. It's just that you have a policy that I don't know, Mike, if you had any thoughts on what your thought was there.
We have had some issues with the bank indicating that they only do this for government entities. So I need to go back and meet with you and get the, I've looked at the FDIC guidance, and I think, I can use this report with a letter to each of the banks requesting that they basically collateralize the balance of that account for a not-for-profit.
Okay. So that's good. So then that's something that will be addressed coming up then, it sounds. So that's good.
Well, and we can do that in the next 10 days.
Yeah, whenever you want to talk about it. The other thing is when you look at page 16, there's a discussion of risks and uncertainties. There's a generic, disclosure, which again, we may have had last year in your statement, I think because we issued it right around the March of the end of March of 2020. It's been updated to say that obviously this is something that has endured, but we do talk about how this may have impacted the organization. And we talk about the programs that you participated in for the loans and some of the fiscal sponsorships, and then also the fact that you entered into this loan for the PPP, and there's still, even though you expect it to be forgiveness, there's still risk related to it. The risk, I would say, is fairly minimal given the fact that it's under $2 million. It seems like the smaller loans are going through the process pretty easily. It's the ones over 2 million that are being audited for sure. But we still have to tell the reader that there's still this period of time that the SBA could come back and question or want to look at something in a period of 6 years. Our position as a firm is that we're not going to worry about the fact that they can come back in 6 years. It's more of a disclosure to let the readers know that this is something that could happen. I mean, that could happen with any grant program that you have where the government reserves the right to do such a review. I know, Jim, you had a question on something with the PPP, but the accounting that we chose, or management chose, is you have an option to treat it like a loan, which is debt accounting. And then when it gets forgiven, it's considered an extinguishment of debt. So you can't extinguish a debt until the bank actually formally, with the SBA, extinguishes the debt. They say it's been forgiven. So there's no in between with that type of accounting. The alternative accounting, which I would say 95% of my clients are using the debt accounting, which is what you're doing, which I think is the more conservative approach, which we support. But some are trying to get the revenue recognition this year. You do have an option to apply a grant model, which is like a conditional grant. In that case, though, you have to prove, and then we have to be very, very sure that ultimately you're going to get the forgiveness. But even if you get forgiveness after year end, that doesn't mean you go back and say, oh, it should have been revenue. It just means that you got the forgiveness after year end. So I don't know, Jim, if you had a question.
No, I'm fine with that explanation. I was just curious about the first of the PPP loans, which I guess have not been extinguished. They've been paid but not extinguished. And in other words, I guess I wondered why that wasn't treated as a subsequent event. Not the second loan, which you have, but the first one.
It should be in the footnote. If it isn't, it should be. If you look at note,
Unless it's in a different place.
it might be tucked in somewhere else.
Okay.
Yeah, it's in a different place, Jim. If you look on page 18, the first paragraph, the last sentence, it says subsequent to year end in February, the loan was fully forgiven by the SBA.
I've been looking at someplace. That's great. Thanks.
But that's the accounting. And then subsequently you applied for the PPP2 and that's just disclosed as such right now. Let me just see what else I had wanted to draw to your attention to here. Yes, I mean, it's the same thing. Page 18, it's where we just were, note 6. I mean, that's an entire new footnote that just describes the loan program. And again, the fact that we're treating it as a loan, we have to treat it based on the terms. So even if you're subsequently deciding to pay the idle back, we have to still disclose it as if you were going to do it the way that it's written. And then we would update that next year.
Okay.
And then, yeah, I mean, I already referred to it, but the fiscal agent sponsorships on page 21. Otherwise, the disclosures are very consistent, just updated for this year. So I think those were the highlights I wanted to go through with you. Does anyone else have any questions on the financials?
Matt, is there no management letter this year?
No, I don't have any comments. I mean, at this point, basically all the things I want to talk to you about have been, I've done it verbally here. Again, we have no adjustments and nothing, no control deficiencies that we need to bring to your attention. So I think at this point, I'm pretty pleased with the way you're handling the transactions over the course of the year. I think the only other thing I know Mike and I talked a little bit about, I think we can have a subsequent conversation about this or a follow-up. I think Mike's been looking at the processes and the way you do things and looking for, there's always that constant discussion and analysis of efficiency, right? And, making sure you have the right controls, make sure you're taking advantage of what software tools and things that are out there. I think Mike's on top of that. We've had some conversations. I'd like to revisit that with him. I'm finding a lot of nonprofits they are looking for ways to integrate more and more with their bank, as far as processing of transactions. I mean, you guys have been working on that, I think, in the last few years to try to find opportunities there. So that's the only comment I would leave with the committee is it would be interesting to hear, if you haven't already, from Mike, or at some point, if you want me to talk about it with you as well, if we can do it in conjunction. Just what other, what opportunities potentially you could do to, continue to increase efficiency and automation. But that's more of that's more of your strategic, that's more of a decision you got to make how fast you want to go there.
And some of the options that Erin and I have looked at, that Matt and the UHY team have presented to us, are more sophisticated than an organization like ours could absorb or benefit from. But Erin and I continue to look at different processes, and I think that when you look at the additional volume of dollars, and you look at the fact that there were at least 150 grants that were issued, and you look at the increase in the loan volume and administration that Erin processed this year, certainly I want to thank her for her extra effort, and also all of the work that goes into assisting UHY with the audit, and the work that Lisa and Erin have done to get the Paris reports ready and to file following the board meeting next week with the Authority Budget Office. I would also like to just take a quick minute and do some quick math. We had a $277,000 loss, which I don't like to see. But as Matt indicated, 168 of that was comprised of adding 100,000 to the loan loss allowance and the $68,000 in deferred PPP forgiveness. So that brings us down to $109,000 loss. You'll recall that the original budget included a loss of $60,000 that we were going to take 1/3 of the Ginsburg or DNJ land sale. So when we take that off, we're basically $49,000 over budget. We had projected when we did the revised budget that we would be $24,900 off. So we're basically $25,000 off from the budget that we approved in mid-year. And again, I think that the added expense resulted in part from the cost associated with getting the staff geared up for remote operations, some of the additional outside consulting to process the grant programs and assist us in those areas. And when you look at the fact that, we've put $1.3 million back into businesses in the region, in the county, and the tremendous response that CEDC and everyone working here was able to deliver, and considering our mission, I never like to have a loss. I think last year we made a $589 profit, but I do think that being, and I just think that when you look at that $277,000 number, I think it just needs some explanation.
Hey, does anyone have any further questions for Matt on the financial statement? If not, I will accept a motion to approve the financial statement or the drafted financial statement.
So moved.
And a second, please.
Tish Finnegan, second.
Fine. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Okay, then that has been approved. Statement of internal controls. Everybody got a copy. Any discussion about the statement of effectiveness of internal controls? If not, I will accept a motion to approve that.
So moved.
And do I have a second? Hello?
Yeah, we lost
Tish
Jim.
Finnegan, Tish Finnegan,
Okay.
second.
Thank you, Tish. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Fine. Now we can move on to the investment report. Okay. So we got a corrected investment report
Lisa?
yesterday or the day before. And is there any discussion about that? Has everybody had a chance to read the investment policy and take a look at the report?
Just a question, and I've never, it may be redundant, but I've never noticed it before. What are the fees and why is Key Bank so high?
Mike, you're turned off. If you could maybe answer that.
We did go to a platform that allows us to transfer money between each of the accounts, that we're able to use ACH, and we're on their Key Navigator system. And I think, we didn't see that in the past because it got absorbed by the interest that was being earned on the account. But, we'll take a look at that and see if we can't get them to tighten that up. But, it's Erin has the capacity of, moving funds between any account. She has the ability now to do ACH, and we have, added capacity, which they charge for.
Okay,
Yeah, some of it's also wire fees, and we also have the remote scanner where I don't go to the bank; the checks go through the scanner.
right,
And
okay,
depending on how much goes through there, there's charges.
okay.
And we have that. That's a good point, Aaron. I had forgotten about the fact that with COVID, we've been wiring money to Andy's account for the escrow account to pay the loans. And, I think in the past we wrote checks. So I think as we come out of COVID, we can perhaps, tighten that up a little bit, not only talking to the bank, but looking at how we process things.
It sounds like they're justified. I just wondered what they were.
Yep.
And Mike, didn't we make a change in the authorized depositories? Didn't we drop TD Bank?
We did. Let's see.
In Roman 7.
Jim,
Yes.
we have to include that on the report because we did not take it off the policy earlier. It's just easier at this point. We'll take it off when we have our next meeting and just accept it right now. I noticed it like last week.
Yeah, not a problem.
Okay. If there are,
On.
no, I'm sorry,
You're asking for a vote on this? Then I had a quick question for you, okay?
go right ahead.
All right, my question was, my system disengaged at a certain point while Mike was finishing up on audit and financial related matters. So I assume you put this to a vote.
We did.
Okay, I want you to know you have my vote. I just was disengaged at the time. So I actually, if you want to record it after the fact.
Thank you. We noticed that you dropped off. We're glad that you were able to make it back.
I promise it was unintentional.
Okay, fine. And we also voted on the statement of internal controls. There was no discussion on that.
Okay,
Okay, so we will move to a motion, please, for the 2020 investment report. Can I
make
have
the
a motion, please? Yeah.
Jim LePen moves.
And a second?
Second.
Thank you. And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Thank you. That has been approved. Portfolio report.
Would you like to cover that, Mike?
No, Martha, go ahead.
Okay.
And then if you could also briefly describe the process that we go through for UHY quarterly, which resulted in why we increased the loan loss reserve by 100,000.
Yes.
Thank you.
So addressing the portfolio report, we have one loan that is 30 days in arrears. That loan is currently receiving payments of principal and interest by the SBA under the CARES Act. Everyone else is current. But I did want to remind the committee that Train Time Express is in deferment. They're in that loan. They have two separate loans with us, and I believe they're in deferment until July. And we don't really know yet whether they're going to have a season or not. And regarding the portfolio risk rating, that is a process we go through quarterly. Our new, well, it's not so new anymore, our down home loan management software enables us to apply a risk rating to each loan. We do that on a quarterly basis and then come up with an amount. It calculates an amount that we need to have in reserve. And the additional $100,000 really was based on that risk rating and the great unknown, which is, and there's still an unknown there as to how many businesses may be affected long-term by the pandemic.
Okay, thank you, Martha. Is there anyone that has any questions about the portfolio report? If not, I'll accept the motion to approve the portfolio report.
So moved.
And do I have a second?
Second.
Fine, thank you. And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay. We'll move on to the committee evaluation. Unfortunately, I checked my packet and I missed, for some reason, I didn't realize that I didn't have that.
No, John, I sent it to you this morning. I couldn't find, I thought I had mailed it to you. I guess I didn't, so I sent it this morning.
Okay. Let's see if I can,
Looks like we're in general concurrence on this one.
okay,
Yeah,
that's. Okay, I probably won't be able to pick it up quickly. Is there? Yeah, I don't see it. So, as long as everybody has had a chance to see it and agrees that we don't have a lot of discussion, and since I can't talk about it myself. But if
John,
there
if
is
you
no,
want to, we can table this. We can hold off on that.
no, if we have a quorum, I trust the rest of the committee. And,
Okay.
if there's is there anything that we need to discuss? If not, I will accept the
Only
motion.
thing I would say, John, on when we had a comparable situation in governance, we didn't
Yeah.
even approve it. We just noted it and inserted it in the record.
Okay,
But
fine.
in this one, there is,
Yeah, it does say that it requires a vote. Lisa, we can either table it or we can vote on it.
No, either, you can just enter it into the record. This isn't one that we have to submit to the ABO.
Okay,
That's the full board. This one we're required to do, but as long as you've done it, then you've filled your requirements.
okay, that's fine. Before we go to public comment, is there anything else that anybody would like to bring up about the audit and finance?
Mr. Chairman, included in, I was able to send you this morning, which I will include in the packet for the full board meeting, a quick snapshot of the balance sheet and profit and loss from 2014 to 2020 using the UHY reports. And I think it's certainly helpful to see relative comparisons, particularly in light of the experience of COVID.
you have a conclusion, Mike?
Well, it's interesting. Right now, our in 2014, our total assets were 3.445. They're now 3.599. The 7-year average would have been 3.417. So, from a asset standpoint, we're steady as we go. On the net position at year end, the 7-year average is 2,722,000, and the 2021 is 2,717,000. So, as a not-for-profit, I just wanted to be sure we weren't losing ground over time, and I think it's a true credit to all of the work that the entire team does, and also the support we have from the board.
Okay, I do have that report in front of me. Thanks, Mike. Any other discussion before we go to public comment? Okay, is there anyone from the public online that would like to make any comments? Not hearing anything from the public, I will entertain a motion to close the meeting.
So moved.
And do I have a second? Come on, Jim.
You're a hostage right now. All right, I'll give you a second.
All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Aye.
Let the minutes show that you were in Ethiopia when you were making that. I wonder if the ABO will consider it
I was
illegal. Thanks,
I'm
Jim.
so, I'm
See you
actually.
Tuesday.
Thank you all. Thank you,
All right,
Matt,
take
too.
care.
And
Thanks, Matt, very much.
thank your entire
Thank you.
team, Matt, especially
Yeah,
Nicole.
I'll let them know, and thank you guys too. I appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Jim, it's nice seeing you. He hung up on me.